I want to tell you I want to introduce you to somebody here who has been on my show, I think, only a few times, in person. And this guy is responsible for changing the course of my thinking politically. You know, a lot of people get blame, I guess, for changing my thinking. This is the guy who is responsible for a lot of it. Jonah Goldberg. He is the author of this book, Liberal Fascism, which is a must. But now he has The Tyranny of Cliches, which is a little lighter than the happy face with the Chaplin mustache on it. This one, you actually take on the cliches, and we talked about some of them on the radio today. Sure. You know, let them eat cake, never said, and when you explain it, it's completely different.
Right.
Explain that one more time.
Sure. So, you know, FDR, liberals, Robert Reich, President Obama, you know, all these guys, they always love to say about the rich, oh, their answer to everything is just let them eat cake. And historically, let them eat cake is what Marie Antoinette is supposed to have said to show how indifferent she was to the plight of the poor. And the reality is, first of all, she never said it. But second of all, the real phrase is let them eat brioche, which is like let them eat very expensive bread. And the reason why a limousine liberal of 18th century France would say that, or I guess it would be a gilded cage liberal, or gilded chariot liberal of 18th century France would say that, is because they had a law that said if you're a baker and you run out of cheap bread, you have to sell the expensive bread at the same price. And so this completely...
Which you could see our government doing right now.
Oh, absolutely, right. It's the equivalent of saying that if you run out of Pabst Blue Ribbon, you have to sell 18-year-old scotch at the same price, right? It completely blows up the market.
Right.
No one wants to make too much bread for fear of, you know, and so when you say, why don't they just eat brioche? Why don't they just eat expensive bread? It was a classic sort of limousine liberal, out-of-touch, economically illiterate approach to say, well, they should just eat the more expensive stuff. And the whole reason why you had a bread crisis, not the whole reason, but one of the reasons why you had a bread crisis in the first place was because, just like with rent control, how it screws up housing prices, the bread regulation screwed up the bread markets.
Right. It just as it would if you said, I mean, you know, the Pabst Blue Ribbon thing, but if you said, buy regular gas, and if you're out of regular, then you have to sell super premium
at the same price. Right.
That would screw up everything.
Everything.
Because the refiners and they wouldn't know what to do.
Right.
I mean, you would just not want it.
Right. When you start subsidizing the market, you skew the market, and that's what creates these problems.
Okay, so the point of this book is almost all of the phrases that you know are bogus,
right.
And they're made as traps to stop you from winning an argument.
Right.
You can't get past them.
Right. That's a big part of it. I also want to say, look, I mean, conservatives, Republicans, they've got their own cliches, their own bumper stickers. But the difference between conservatives and libertarians on the one side and liberals on the other side is that conservatives and libertarians are honest about their ideological positions.
Some.
You know, well, right. But you know, you very rarely hear a serious conservative libertarian say, you know, I don't believe in labels or don't label me, right? It's only liberals who say, I don't have an ideology. Ideology is what you have. I'm just a pragmatist, a fact finder, a realist. I'm a member of the reality-based community.
Right? Wait. Why can't you say, I don't have a label? I mean, why is that a bad thing?
Okay, so first of all, you know, like you have Michael Bloomberg thing, right? This group No Labels, right, which is one of the most astoundingly stupid organizations in America.
Michael Bloomberg is involved.
Yeah, of course. And you know, in the book, I trace the history of this whole argument from Napoleon, and I bring it all the way up to Bloomberg, and I kind of like the symmetry of two megalomaniacal, 5'0" dudes who want to run everybody's life. Look, first of all, if you say you don't believe in labels, labels are another word for these things called words. And words are like really important. They communicate all sorts of things. If you think labels are meaningless, I challenge you, when you go home tonight, go underneath your kitchen sink and remove the labels to all your cleaning supplies and canned goods, and then just let nature take its course. Right? But second of all, when people do this, I don't believe in label stuff, or can't we get beyond these partisan differences and get beyond this ideological divide stuff, you hear this all the time in Washington. You never hear people say, we got to get past these ideological differences, we got to get past this partisan divide, and so I'm going to abandon all of my principles and agree with you. People only say this when they want you to shut up and get with their program. And so when they say we got to get these labels out of politics, what they're really saying is, please stop bringing up your principled objections to my agenda. And it's sort of a continuation. It's the same version of what I argue in liberal fascism, right? In liberal fascism, one of my arguments is that the best working definition of a fascist in contemporary life is simply a conservative who's winning an argument, right? Because it's what they say to shut you up. When Al Gore says his critics are like Nazis in brown shirts, he's not saying it to start a conversation. He's saying it to demonize someone.
Right.
And
but let's go here, because you got you didn't have any problem with that cover, did you? I mean, nobody said anything about that.
No, not at all.
No, not at all.
No,
okay.
yeah.
When I said, look, you're planting the seeds of fascism. These are the same seeds that were planted by communist China, Russia, Nazi Germany, Mussolini. Oh my gosh. Now you, of course, are calling the president Hitler or Mussolini,
right.
And they push that back. You can't assign, you can't look back in the past and say, look, this is where it leads, or they crucify you.
Well, you can't do it for the left. You're not allowed to do it to the left, right? I mean, in the CNN YouTube debate in 2008, Hillary Clinton was asked, "What is a liberal and are you one?"
Oh,
and Hillary answers, "Well, liberal used to mean standing up for the little guy against big power, but now it's come to mean big government. And that's why I don't call myself a liberal anymore. I call myself a modern progressive."
That's what led me to you.
Yeah, and she says it has deep roots in the American political tradition. I always want to ask people, if Mike Huckabee had gone up and was asked, "Are you conservative? And what is a conservative and are you one?" If he had said, "Well, conservative used to mean this, but now it means that, so I don't call myself that anymore. I call myself a modern Confederate," which has deep roots in the American political tradition. Right? The New York Times would get its dress over its head. There would be riots. Doesn't he understand the political history? Doesn't he understand? The left has no obligation and no responsibility or accountability to own its own intellectual history. And that's part of the book, is that they reject all of that because they don't want to be hindered by it. They don't want labels. They think labels only matter for demonizing and criticizing others. And that's what we saw with the Tea Party.
Right. And so let me go, because I want to get to some solutions here in a second. But
sure.
I got to get to one really satisfying story. It is, I'm guessing, the most, if I'm your editor, I check one fact over and over and over again.
Okay.
And its initials are BS. Barbara Streisand.
Oh, Barbara Streisand, yeah. Okay, well, look, there's a certain sort of vendetta or tongue war between me and Barbara Streisand. I don't know if she knows about it, but I enjoy it enormously. When I started writing for the LA Times, she publicly canceled her subscription in protest.
Because of you?
Because of me. And, it really doesn't get much better than that.
That's fantastic.
I mean, there's not much I can claim that you can't, but I got that one. And so Barbara Streisand, I use her as one of these examples of how the left has these, the last place in America where you can live like a true aristocrat, like a royalty from olden times, is if you're a Hollywood type, right? And so Barbara Streisand, among other things, has orders to her staff. They're not allowed to look her in the eye.
I know that to be true.
That she basically lives like an Egyptian princess. And the problem is, there are a couple of problems. One is she says she wants to impose her vision on the entire country, right? She can't even handle freedom for the people around her. And my answer to so many of the problems in public policy is to push all these things down to the most local level possible, right? But anyway, so she had this response from my LA Times column when I got picked up at the LA Times. She said, "Goldberg dilutes the gamut of diversity. We like to be tested and all this." And she uses diversity if it just means good, right? And the problem is that the person I replaced, this guy Robert Scheer, who's a soaked-to-the-bone socialist, 60s radical, she and Barbara Streisand agree on everything, but she thinks diversity just means good. Diversity always means having your own preconceptions confirmed and supported, and that's the way the left uses diversity. They use the term diversity as a way to justify their positions on everything, and if there's a kind of diversity that challenges it, it's no longer diversity. And the real problem when it comes to social policy for diversity is that if you look at higher education, if you look at government quotas and all of that kind of thing, the way they use diversity is a way to permanently empower bean counters, quota mongers, and the rest to be able to organize populations the way Stalin wanted to organize populations. The idea is that if diversity is good, they say diversity is as good for you in education as it is in as learning math and science and physics. And this is a complete reversal of the old argument. Whatever you thought of the old argument for affirmative action, it was a serious moral argument. The serious moral argument was black people were treated shabbily, they were treated evilly from slavery and Jim Crow, and they're starting from behind and we got to help them out. That's a morally serious argument. The argument for diversity says we get to pick and choose who the special people are, who deserve credit. It's not Jews, it's not Asians, it's Hispanics and blacks. And we get to permanently decide how we're going to organize these institutions. And it's all about getting more power for social planners.